I've invested over $100,000 in courses, coaching programs, masterminds, only to be left broke and wanting to burn my business down.
Everyone I talk to now is like, I just wish I could get off social media.
Most of the people you think have it figured out are completely drowning behind the scenes. They're crying when they're not on live on Instagram.
I talk to a lot of scaling entrepreneurs who have built their own prison. And now if I stop, my whole business crumbles.
We get caught jumping after new tactics when we realize we just built a business that we don't actually want to be running. Does this business or business model actually line up with the business we want to run?
The reason it's not working is actually tied back to you, not to the platform.
Hello and welcome back. Today we have an absolutely incredible interview, and I have copious amounts of notes from this conversation. This is something that I will tell you went very wide in what was discussed, but also at the same time went very deep into the conversation that we unpacked around all things marketing and what that actually looks like in today's current ecosystem for you and for your business. And most importantly, in a way that actually feels aligned. So today I'm diving with Landon, and he's a serial entrepreneur and a marketing strategist who has managed over $15 million in advertising across 10 plus years in the industry. What makes his story so compelling, though, is that he's been through this entire cycle. He has done what many of us have experienced. We've had the shiny object chasing, the burnout, the business failure, the six-figure debt, and he has come out the other side with a new approach to actually what it takes to build a sustainable business. And after navigating significant debt, clinical burnout, he pivoted to what he calls an unhustled philosophy. He has now built a thriving publication on Substack with thousands of subscribers and has created 9 distinct revenue streams with one single platform, all while working 4 to 6 hours a day. So with this, what we dive into in this episode, why every marketing strategy actually works, but not every single one is going to work for you, and how to identify what actually aligns with your values and the lifestyle that you want for yourself. He talks about the real difference between brand building and conversion-focused marketing, and where these two sections intersect. This was such an incredible part of the conversation that even myself, I went back to, because the way he explains it is probably the best way that I've ever seen the duality of brand building, marketing, and conversion discussed in one time. His journey, he also discusses through the early days of coding funnels, click funnels, and how he exited that and discovered that consistency really was the thing that beats all of those tactics every single time. He discussed why he believes that things take the time they take and how to set realistic expectations when you are someone who wants to build something sustainable. He also unpacked the dangerous trap of building a business based on somebody else's definition of success. And then he went into a masterclass, and I'm telling you, a masterclass on Substack, how Substack allowed him to build his entire business around writing with very little video, basically no photo shoots, no endless content creation, and why being early in emerging platforms can actually be massive leverage. He also discusses why quality times quantity is the actual formula for marketing success, but how to balance both without burning out and sacrificing depth for the sake of volume. So I will tell you, this is a complete masterclass. If there's any episode that I would want you to take out a pen and paper on, it is this one. There's so much juiciness that Landon shares with us. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
All right, you guys, welcome back to Ambitious. Today, we are diving into what I probably anticipate is going to be, in some respect, like a marketing masterclass. Because even I was just saying before we press record and diving into preparing notes, I was like, I'm stoked for this one to dive into everything. So Landon, welcome to Ambitious.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. I have notes prepped in front of me. I was like, well, if we talk about this, have some notes about that. And so I love these conversations, just being able to come share and take the conversation where it goes, because I think it's so needed in this crazy world that we live in.
Absolutely. And we were just saying before recording that I feel like knowing that you have notes, we're probably those type A people who are like, okay, like I have structure. This is what we're going to talk about. And I have a high prediction. It probably will go nothing according to that plan, which is probably great because it means we'll dive into a lot. But I will say, when I was diving into kind of your background and all of the things that you've done, did I read this correctly that you've been in marketing in some respect for almost 2 decades?
Yeah, I say like marketing adjacent, because it's like,
Okay.
I got my start effectively doing like web design. So I'm like,
Okay.
I would classify that as inside of kind of marketing. I'm helping companies with their website to grow their business. And then I started building funnels and doing SEO. And it's just, upwards of, it's difficult to trace it exactly back when I started, because I was like, I had college instructors giving me work like when I
Yeah.
was going through college. So yeah, it's been, pretty close to 2 decades, which seems crazy to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Well, entrepreneurship is like a rabbit hole. You feel like a year flies by in no time. So it makes sense. You're like, I don't even know how long I've been doing this. It's just been a long time. I guess the reason I ask is I feel like in having that much time in the space, like you're saying, maybe not in the depths of like copy, or maybe it was in funnels, it's in different areas. But in being in the space in general for that long, I would hazard to guess you've seen all of the shifts that have happened. Like to your point, we had the blog era, we have a lot of emphasis on the SEO era. We've got, paid ads, it's all pay to play. You have the funnel side of things, you've got webinars, you've got the ebook era. Like you've been around for all of it. So I guess one of the first questions that I feel like I have is, what is the biggest learnings you've had in being through those different eras when it comes to effectiveness on marketing? Because I think we probably have some pretty similar beliefs around like depth versus width kind of being an emphasis of how to win. But I'm curious, since you really have seen all those eras, what you've seen shift and kind of be a through line of what's actually worked.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, because the length of time that I've been in the industry, I had to really kind of grieve that I wasn't where I thought I was going to be after being in the industry for so long. Because when you are in things for a very long time and then you see other people coming up and then they accelerate past you, and then you kind of don't always like seeing that. But way back, I was hand coding funnels before tools like ClickFunnels existed for like real estate agents and things along those lines. I was running Google ads to funnels for real estate agents. I was hand coding checkouts to make purchases, like the code to process the payment and like catch if the CVV was rejected before things like Shopify existed, and like around when Stripe was just released. I've created blogs to try and capitalize on like AdSense revenue. And I've done more things than I can usually recount at any given time. The one thing that I really started to dig into probably 2022-ish was really getting deep into kind of like branding and really starting to study the people that I saw really successful in different industries. And I really started to come to a very singular conclusion. And it was typically the people that were at the top that everybody's kind of like looking at and modeling. They usually were doing a singular thing for a very long period of time. So we get very caught up in this, 8 weeks programs and 12-week courses and 30-day challenges. And we start to get a little bit skewed expectations on like, that's how much it's going to take before I start to see success. But then I was like, okay, this podcaster, they're on episode 800. I'm on episode 7. Like, okay, maybe there's something there. This person, I remember seeing a blogger write, and he had published over 2,000 blog articles. I'm like, oh. And then I started to look at some YouTubers, and you look at like a Mr. Beast or a Logan Paul, and you're like, oh, like they've been creating videos for like 10 to 15 years consistently, week over week over week. And I just really started to shift my perspective around effectively what I would call brand building, but effectively business building is, I believe consistency is a root foundation of everything. And a lot of people argue with me and they're like, well, consistency is not enough. And I'm like, well, nothing happens without it. But
Yeah.
everything works at the end of the day. I have seen every single thing, every single business model. There's still people that make money with blogs. There are still people that make money with webinars. There's still people that use book funnels and self-liquidating offer funnels and challenges and all of the shiny objects we jump around to. They all work. It's not usually if it works. It's usually a matter of, are we going to stick with it until we make it work? And does this business or business model actually line up with the business we want to run. And I think there's so much inside of that, but most of the time people just stop before it had the opportunity to be effective. There was some key research by two individuals, Peter Field and Les Binet, and they studied effectively brand activation versus brand building in terms of like profitability for a business. And sales activation is, conversion focused messages, buy now. That's always going to outperform brand messaging, especially if you're thinking like TV and zooming a little bit outside of our specific industry. So, but brand is something that takes 6, 12, 24, 36 months to start to accumulate. And their research showed that it will outpace sales activation in the long term. But what happens is people don't, until those lines cross, people quit because they want that immediate payoff. It's no different than, so let's say it's just social media. Yes, you can go into the DMs and have a bunch of stories and posts that are going to be very sales focused, and you might get some sales and customers now. But as soon as you burn through that existing audience you have, if that audience is not growing, your sales will start to plateau and decline, and your business will not grow if you are not building a business and an audience and all of these things that kind of come on the back end of it. So I've really found that everything really does work. We just really have to be more intentional around giving things the time to develop and like marinate. And, a saying that my wife said one time, and I can't remember, I think it's from probably some kind of like Buddhist philosopher style person. It's like, things take the time they take. And it just really holds true for me because I have a soft spot for people coming into the industry because we're sold that things are going to work quick. But it's like sometimes things take the time they take. You have zero control over how long it's going to take. And we might need to talk about your definitions of success and what you're actually trying to create. But like, let's not talk about the best business model, the best social platform to go on. Like, if you hate being on video, then it doesn't matter if YouTube's the best platform to be on. It's just probably not going to be an effective strategy. If you hate eating meat, going on a carnivore diet probably is not going to be effective, like long term. So I think that's really kind of the biggest thing that I've seen when it comes to like really zooming out and trying to look at like my career from like a 30,000 foot view.
There's so much there because I think, well, obviously one of the pieces which I talk about a lot, I think in business, but also just in general, is the ability to defer the dopamine spike. Because like I talk about that even with this podcast, and you were just saying, even with your podcast, having like 200 plus episodes for one of them that you did. To do that when you're recording, for some people 20 minutes to an hour, some people 90 minutes every single week, and you're not getting an instant client from that. You're not blowing up and going viral overnight. You're not Joe Rogan 50 episodes later. And so most people, like you're saying, have this, okay, well, obviously this is not working. But from what I'm hearing, you basically stretch out the context from which you're evaluating it. And as you're saying, like the criteria. And when you mentioned, the context in comparison to others, it's funny that you say that because I was saying that actually to a team member. I said, sometimes I feel like I'm very long-term in the sense of that I recognize that something is going to be beneficial for me in 5 to 10 to 20 years in business, even if it's not something that does anything for me today. But then I sometimes wonder, oh man, like how much further would I be if I had these little wins today, in the sense of where would our cash flow be? Where would our revenue be? Where would our business be in the sense of size if I just didn't care about that? And I was all about, like you're saying, that converting piece. For me, my biggest concern, I guess, my biggest fear when you're talking about those kind of two pieces hitting a connection point is like, I feel like I've always focused on brand because I know that that's how you exist forever. Like it's those celebrities that you're like, I don't even know how so-and-so is still going, but they're still somehow somewhat relevant. That for me was always what I had as like my North Star. But to your point, it also oftentimes was never leverageable in the short term. And so then when you're in those seasons where you're like, hey, we want to double the business this year, there's a lot of shiny object of, to your point, well, we could do this and we could do that. And it's like, yeah, but that's all short-term stuff. And so it's been hard, to your point of like seeing other people versus you, because I, even for myself, get so frustrated that if I just didn't care about that and I could just focus on the quick dopamine hit of cash flow or sales, where I could be, but I also try to remind myself that that also could be the full reason that I'm out of business in the next 10 years.
It makes me smile because I think about this all the time. I have business partners that I have these conversations with because there are, I'm not going to name names. I'm sure we know of some of them inside of this online marketing and coaching world where they have, different personality traits. They might be, well, we won't name any like clinical terms, but where they're going to do whatever it takes to make money. And not all of us are wired that way, but that is what's taught in the industry, because those are typically the people that are going to do anything at all costs. Then they're the one making the money, and then they're the one selling the course. And then we have somebody that operates just differently. Our operating system, our value system is completely different. And we come in there and we go, oh, I need to do this and I need to double the business. And our view of success is tailored based off of somebody else's blueprint, somebody else's value system. And something that I've seen repeatedly over and over and over, because I've been behind the scenes of a lot of businesses where like you're making 50K a month and you can't pay yourself. I'm like, there's something fundamentally wrong here. Like you could cut all of your expenses and do $10,000 a month in sales and be taking home more money. But our perception is so skewed that we think that 50K is better than the 10K, even though we're making no money. We need to really take a step back and go like, what is the point? Why do we need to double the business? Is there an actual inherent reason that this is what we need to do? Or are we chasing something that is the goal of somebody else? Because I've been in masterminds where everybody conforms to whoever the guru is standing at the front of the room, and we all start chasing the same goals. And 6 months later, everybody leaves the mastermind because everybody hates their life. They hate the business that they've created. If we don't like what we're doing, what is it for? I've seen way too often people effectively trying to do a lot of that stuff and taking a lot of those, here's how I can make money today, and eventually wind up in a business that they want to escape, which has actually become like my fundamental like thesis when it comes to business. Like, well, let's unpack that. Like, why are we doing this? You shouldn't be crying on our coaching call. Like we need to talk about this. If you don't want to do those things and you don't want to hire these people, like let's take a step back and reevaluate the business. But it's so scary to do that. I think I'm really wanting to try and like change the narrative a little bit about how we approach these things and go like, what do we actually want? Because we see, I love the fact that I started in a lot of this direct response world. So we got ads, sales letters, and we got, webinar funnels. And then I started to become a creator. And then I started to get exposed to all of these creators, and they've built big audiences and they don't know how to make money. And then we have all of these direct response people over here that if they turn their ads off, they're broke. And they have no audience. And I'm like, the magic is kind of in the middle. Like we don't need to go completely to one side, but if I had to pick one, I'm like, if I had a big audience, I'm going to figure out a way to monetize it. And a lot of those people start because they just love what they're doing. They just love it. They love creating content. So like recording a podcast every week is nothing. So it's how do we create that blend for that individual person that lines up with what they're actually trying to do so that we can just create sustainability. It's easy to go fast because for so many of us, it's the default, but it almost becomes like a coping mechanism is just to work and not unpack the stuff. Just like it's easier to play video games, watch porn, or grab a drink than it is to like go to therapy and work on yourself. Work often starts to fill a little bit of that as well. And there's just certain people where like sometimes work for them is that. If we take an Alex Hormozy, for example, who's been very glorified and he's been extremely successful, mad respect for him and Layla with what they've created. But when you watch him talk, he works a lot and he says you should work more and you should split your day into like, 5 8-hour blocks of times and like But when
Yeah.
you hear him talk and he goes, I have no social life. All I do is work. I have no friends. I just hang out with Layla. And you're like, but is that what you want to create? Because if you're chasing what somebody like that is doing, we have to understand that there's some compromises that are going to happen in order to get there. And most of us just kind of turn a blind eye to that because we don't think it's going to happen to us. I think for
Well,
all,
I think
sorry,
it's
go
like
ahead.
the classic thing of like, I'm going to butcher the quote, but someone basically said it's not about buying into the goal of what someone's achieved. It's about buying into the process of how they achieved it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of, I think about it almost like people who say like, I want to be a bikini competitor. And it's like, do you know what that entails? Because like the commitment, the dedication that it takes to have a certain physique, have a certain level of health. It's like, if you're not into, like we were at an event together recently and I saw you eating your super clean food while I was eating like a smash burger or something. And I was thinking about that actually in prepping for today. Cause I was like, it's the whole essence of someone wants the outcome of health, but it's like you're not committed enough to the process of what that pursuit of that goal looks like. And so the achievement of said thing is not actually about the desire to achieve it, like to your point of hitting a 50K month, 100K month. It's about what process are you buying in as a part of the pursuit to doing that. And I think to your point of that middle ground, when you were saying that, my brain went to the level of self confidence and kind of self conviction that you have to do that. Because I remember when I first started as like my original days in business, when I had a fitness business, at that time it was all funnels. Like it was like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to create, this sales page to this upsell, to this order bump, to this one-time offer, to this email sequence, and this is how you're going to grow. And at the time I was like, I'm so green, like whatever you tell me, that's what I'm going to do. And I remember taking out thousands of dollars to hire these developers and copywriters. And like, obviously this is way before AI. So like there was all like literally you sitting, looking at a Google Doc for hours and hours and hours. And I remember I put this up and nothing happened, obviously, because there was no audience and there was no ads being run to it. So it was just kind of this like sitting duck that was just laying there. And I thought, okay, this is not as liberating as I thought this process would look like. And it also felt very detached. It felt very cold. There was no, there was the timer at the top to create urgency. And there was like these like 16, 17 pages of scrolling, those super, super long form sales pages back in the day. And I remember there was like these mock-ups of people who had like, baby oiled abs and all of this stuff that used to work, which I know for anyone who wasn't in that area, you're like, what is happening? It was a thing and it worked very well for a lot of people. They made a lot of money off it. But when it didn't work, I thought, okay, well, what now? So I went to go hire another mentor. And he was fantastic in the sense of great guy, but one of his approaches that he believed in was this kind of, sales is a numbers game. It's a matter of how many people you can message. And I'm thinking, I'm asking this person who has no idea who I am to invest into my offer through a series of like 7 messages to convert. And, to your point, they get results. So the thing that I came up against, to your point of they all work, is I had, first of all, never considered the lifestyle that I wanted. So I never thought about, okay, well, do I like making content? Do I like writing copy? Do I like spending 4 hours a day in the DMs? Never crossed my mind. I was like, money is the goal, whatever makes that, let's do that. And I think part of my brain, which probably for you, because obviously you do coaching as well, I think for clients or for people who are investing, even for us investing in mentorship, part of it is like, I'm investing in you to give me the guidance. Like you are like my sensei. You're supposed to lead me and you're my guide and you're telling me go left. So I'm going to go left. We almost turn off when we invest this like critical thinking of saying, okay, like, do I like this? Does this land? And it was only once I got to a mentor, I actually worked with him for a very long time. He had done this, messaging and this kind of, sales is a numbers game. And again, people got great results off it. It just didn't land for me. And so I remember him saying, content is a long-term play. Like it's not easy to just put up a post and overnight you're a millionaire. And I remember saying to him though, like, I'm going to try it because I really feel like that's the route that I'm supposed to go. And so, we went really hard with it and we hit 7 figures in 18 months of starting that process. But the only reason I discovered that is because he was like, and I tell him this too, to his face, like he was like my dad who was saying like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to school for this. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm going to become a musician. And I went and did my own thing. And that was the thing that actually helped me to develop my process. And I'm really grateful for that experience because I realized if I hadn't had that other push of this is the way to succeed, I would have never developed my own. But I wonder how many people maybe don't have the outside pressure, the environmental situation, the cue, the spark that creates that discovery. Because I personally feel like I'm coaching even people now who don't trust themselves to discover the thing that works for them, for their lifestyle, for what their values are, like you said.
Yeah, I think business is a lot of self-growth and self-development. As you and your partner George say, it's not just the game and the playbook, it's the player as well. The most simplistic way that I kind of look at business in terms of trying to create kind of like bumper pads for business model design is, I call them like 5 constraints because I haven't come up with a better way to put it. But it's like, okay, well, like what level of profit do we want to be at? What is the timeline that we're looking to achieve this in? And what are our non-negotiables for what we want to do? So like you said, we've got a lot of people that have been pushing ads and webinar funnels. We have a lot of people pushing DMs, just DM as many people as humanly possible, hire all of these VAs from third world countries to send as many DMs as possible, additional accounts. We got the cold email people, and like, there's just every single thing. There's somebody selling a process on how to use that model to win. But it's kind of, I like to refer things similar to fitness because I come from that world, is every diet works similar to how every business model works. But if you can't sustain that diet over the long term, then it's probably not going to work long term. So what I've seen a lot in my experience is a lot of people will come into a program and they will use the methods that are taught and they will see some success and they will become the case study that is used to sell everybody else. But how many of them still are doing that and have that same business 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road? Very few, in my opinion, because I've been there. I've had $42,000 months, and then 3 or 4 months later, it was like $700. I'm like those screenshots and case studies don't necessarily mean that this is what happened forever. No different than we can see somebody that went on a keto diet and dropped an enormous amount of weight, but then they regained it or they couldn't have kept it off because it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't something that lined up with their values or how they wanted to run their business. Because once we kind of understand that from a business standpoint, it comes down to a matter of reach and economics in its most simple term. We need something to sell and someone to sell it to. And if one of them is low, the other one typically needs to be high. If we have no audience, typically what we're selling needs to be expensive if we want to try and make a bunch of money. If we have a very big audience, we can get away with selling something that is inexpensive because the economics work in our favor. But it's when we start to go into, how do I want to thrive? What business do I want to create? We can start to create little guides of like, well, we might want to try this. But like you said, so much of this it requires something that can't be taught, which is experience. If you don't taste things, you don't know what you like and what you don't like. So yes, I spent a very long time trying to write an article on like, is success possible without the struggle? And I really don't think it is because, and I use struggle in a very broad sense, because without contrast, we don't know what we like. If we don't know what we don't like, we don't know what we like. Like, we need to create this environment of like, well, this didn't feel good, I'm going to do this thing over here. For a lot of people, it can be very painful, but it doesn't always have to be as painful. So if I'm here saying, let's just try this, it's just not as sexy as the person that's like, do this and make 10K. But I always come back to the words, like my favorite word these days, which is compromise. So my business messaging is softened because I don't believe in that style of marketing anymore. I've tried it. It didn't work for me, but I've just been sold so many things that did not get me the result. I've invested over $100,000 in courses, coaching programs, masterminds, only to be left broke and like wanting to burn my business down. So I'm not going to sell those things, which I know is not sexy. So when I tell somebody to like, let's slow down and reevaluate things, I know my conversion rate's not going to be as strong as the next person. But I'm
Yeah.
okay with that, because when I peel back my values, I realize that there has not been a single decision I've made in business that was driven by money.
Not to mention they trust you more. Like when they, to your point, they fast forward and they're 5 years down their business, like, you know, when you're working with someone who's actually honest with you, who's actually willing to tell you the thing of like, hey, if this doesn't work for you, here's some other things you could try, but it's not going to give you the same win. Or when I talk to someone, they're like, hey, yeah, I'm starting a podcast. I'm like, don't look up for like 2 years, because you have to go in with the right perspective. And someone's like, oh, well, that's not really like, I was kind of hoping that I could blow up, or I was hoping I could do this. Right. But I think if you're not honest, what I find is those people end up somehow back at your front door anyway, if you are the person who is honest with them. So
100%. I
I've had
agree.
people who I've coached like 4 years ago who are like, hey, I'm back. I want to come home. It was crazy out there. And I was like, okay. So, and that's just because the advice is very quick win. You're not really building anything. There's no foundational building blocks to say, okay, like this is how I want to run my business. And I think to your point with the conversion meets brand, I love that, because I think most people would wonder, okay, how long do I need to put my head down to build brand? I think it's like the number one question people have, because I think especially in today's current market of like, people who create on TikTok and before you know it, they're huge in the sense of exposure. And the other part that I see are people who have smaller in the sense of audience, but the brand like commitment, the brand community, the brand nurture is just at like their family. You say go, the audience goes, even though it is small. And so I would also be curious for you when you think about, okay, conversion, everyone knows is obviously the quick ROI, the sales are coming in, you're seeing the numbers move. That I feel like everyone knows that category. But I think brand for most people, most of us wonder, like, how do you even know if you're at a place where you've got some brand development, where you feel like these two pieces maybe are close to actually meeting?
I don't think I wish that there was an answer, right? It's just like, it's the $1 million question. It's like, well, how long do I need to do this? And I'm like, I have no idea. So
Yeah.
that's why I actually really appreciate my journey, because I'm like 20 years in and I like just kind of have a little bit of recognition in what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're like, well, how long do I need to write on Substack before I start growing? And I'm like, well, it took me 10 months before I started growing at all. And I'm like, here's my growth chart. And it like was a plateau until 10 months of consistently writing. Like there's people that are going to start building a brand and they're going to blow up. They exist. And there's going to be people that never do. And I'm like, I do my best to be as honest and transparent, because I don't feel like I'm of service of somebody if I'm not. I'm not going to sit here and bullshit somebody and say, yeah, like if you do this for 3 months, I took a course. The first course I bought on Twitter was like, if you post, it was like 1 thread a week, post daily and drop 10 comments a day for 6 months and you'll hit 10,000 followers. I'm like, this shit is bullshit. That is not how business works. There is zero guarantee. And just because you work hard, it doesn't mean that you're going to blow up. Your industry might be different. Your personality might be different. How you deliver your message. You might be awkward on camera. You might be on a platform people don't know about. Like you might be talking about a thing that people don't know is a problem. There's always ways that we can improve things and create, forward momentum, but we have no idea. So it's not necessarily about how long is it going to take. Am I ready to monetize? It's like, no, let's be more realistic about what our expectations are. So people are like, how many followers do I need before I can monetize? I'm like, well, monetize is $1 and you've made money online. So are we talking about making your first dollar, or are we kind of using this as like a euphemism to how long is it going to take me before I'm making $10,000 a month, which is what I know you are actually intending.
What you're actually saying.
So it's like, there's only a few ways we can go about it. Like you can either pay for your audience, whatever that is, paid ads or, sponsorships, etc. You can build it organically, or you can get in front of other people's audiences. So it's like, let's determine where you're at, what you're capable of doing, what your bandwidth is, and then let's determine the best way to move forward with that. Like, and if you want to make this much money, let's create a path forward. And then we just need to simply be consistent with it. But I really recommend that people try and when they're first getting started. It's different if somebody's been in the game for a little while, but it's like, we don't want to marry our income to our content creation in the beginning. I don't think it's a wise decision, because we start to make really shitty decisions, because everything is driven from a scarcity place and a scarcity mindset, because we need everything we do to make money. So we start to make decisions that are conversion focused because they're going to make us a quick buck, but they don't typically serve our true values or what we want to be doing in 6, 12, 24 months down the road. So it's this really delicate dance that we have to play, that really comes down to the person's mindset and trust in what they're actually doing and their dedication to be able to create it, which is why I would say I don't make as much money as a lot of other people out there, because I'm not going to make promises that I can't stand behind. And I'm like, I've never hit a monetary goal in a timeline that I was sold. So I am never going to sit here and sell that to somebody else.
And the thing is, I think to your point, it's so easy to press that button if you wanted to. It is a very big, shiny object for most people, because especially in the months for someone listening who's like, okay, I'm trying to scale this. And like, if I just said X, I could have a surge. I could instantly see this ROI from that effort, but it's just like values wise, I can't get there. And I think to your piece of like, well, brand, I agree. It's kind of hard to define. I think for me, what I look at is like ingredients versus recipe. So I feel like when you're starting a brand, there's like this quality quantity conversation. Right now, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of narratives around quantity. It's just about being anywhere and like just as many places as you possibly can. Make sure people can't get away from you. But I think to your point with the brand aspect, and I know that you really care about the aspect of depth within marketing, within brands. I think there's also a depth piece, which is the quality piece that people are looking for. So to your point, like you can have someone who produces 70 pieces of media a week or of marketing in some regard, whether it's podcast, TikTok, Instagram, emails, whatever it might be, but they have no brand. And then you have people who produce a fraction of that. Maybe they produce 5 or they produce 2 and they put a lot of effort into those and they have brands. So I think most people, when they're like, okay, like how do I win this brand game? Like we see, even to your example earlier, Mr. Beast, who does such like intricate testing, even Diary of a CEO does such insane testing of thumbnails and titles and editing. And it's really quality per episode. There's a lot of thought and intention that goes into it. But he could easily say we're releasing 3 episodes a week. He doesn't do that because he focuses on the quality, not just the quantity. So I think that's a question that I get a lot, which I'd be curious your thoughts of, is like, with all of what you know about marketing these different platforms, is there kind of a recipe, if you will? Because I think for me, the ingredients are just as important as the volume of what you get from them. And so I think while, yes, being everywhere obviously gets you exposure, I think it's the first step. Is obviously if people know you, they can buy from you, yes. But if I also know you, meaning I come across your marketing or I come across your stuff, and there's no actual depth to it, meaning there's no values behind it. There's no core mission. There's no consistent perspective. There's no insight. It's all just like 3 quick tips kind of thing. Everything's got a call to action on it. There's no just leaving this with you so you can allow this to land. There's no serving of the audience. Like it's a very selfish focused, like CEO focused platform. When I see that, I'm like, yes, you have visibility, meaning you've literally reached most of the planet, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have depth. So is that actually the way to go? And I think most people, the questions I get is like, is it quantity? Is it quality? Or is it both? And so the analogy I give is it's kind of like baseball. Quality is basically a matter of where you know where to stand, and quantity is how many swings you get. So it's like, of course, if we're standing in the right place, as well as having unlimited swings, that's really where you're going to have the best chance of success. But I think a lot of people are unsure as to, for them, for their marketing and their brand, what they should be focusing on.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because I think it is both, and it is going to change based off of what level we're at in the game, as well as what our current goals are. So I think that it's probably more of like a formula of quantity times quality with a numerical value for each. So if you have really high quantity, but your quality is really low, the value on the other end of the equation is still going to be bad. But if your same thing is if you have really high quality, but the quantity is so low, you're still going to have the same value out on the other side. But if you're doing more and the quality is simply increasing, the value on the other side of the equation is going to continue to grow. So I think it's quantity without the absence of quality. I don't think you can get anywhere without both. Because if you aren't known, it doesn't matter. If nobody knows who you are, you have no reach, you can't sell anything because people need to know who you are. But you only need one person to know who you are in order to make a customer and generate a client. So I think we're overthinking it a little bit because we're trying to find the shortcut. That's truly what I think the base of the conversation is. But in order to get better, typically it requires quantity. So from my perspective, when we're getting started, whether it's getting started in business or a new platform, we need to almost ignore quality to start because we get better through repetition. That's what I believe. If you record one podcast per week for 6 months or a year, I'm going to assume 52 from now, you're going to be a better podcaster. You're going to be a better host. You're going to be able to have a better conversation. I also do believe that that forward momentum of that consistency starts to drive. You start researching how to podcast better and you start getting more excited about your guests. So you just naturally, as a byproduct of doing it, start to build more habits that support that outcome. Then you also, once you're consistent, then we want to start improving quality. But where we get stuck is if we're so over focused on quality that our volume and our quantity is too low. That's the issue. If you're so focused on your YouTube video that you're only putting out one per month, you're not getting enough data to know even what to improve. And perfection, quote unquote, is open to the person receiving it. We don't determine how good it is. It's the person that's receiving that content on the other end. So in the absence of their feedback, the comments, the views, the retention charts, whatever it might be, we don't actually know what to improve. So we have to play this a little bit of a dance. But what I see is in the early stages, we need to have output high so that we can get experience, get feedback to know what to improve, which videos work, which hooks work, which topics, which cohorts are responding the most, improve, start to follow those little breadcrumbs, applying intentionality to it. But as an audience grows, we can usually, like we even see this with people that have been around much longer. They have very large followings. They can almost decrease their quantity and then just focus on putting out more high quality pieces because they don't have the need to reach as many people because they've already built it. So it's kind of like this inverse scale of like, it takes a lot to get the ball moving, but as we grow, it gets easier to push it. And then it's like, once we're established, it's almost like the ball starts kind of rolling down a hill and it's a lot easier. So it's really depends on where we're at in that journey. When I started writing on Substack, my goal was write 24 pieces in 6 months. So no goals on how many subscribers I was going to get, no goals on sales. Then I did that. And then it was just like throughout that process, I started to work on my titles. And then I started to work on like the depth of the article and the structure. And then once I did that, I started to go like, okay, well, how am I going to, now I want to start to monetize this. And then you just slowly start to incrementally improve what you're doing. I really think it's just really getting really personal with that. I think there's research, and I believe I heard it from, I think it was Travis Sago. It was in a course. I believe there's kind of like a formula for bonding where it's something along the lines of like frequency of communication, depth of sharing. And I believe there's like one or two other things. And I think it's like science to do with like creating friendships. So those are things we can't exclude from the conversation. If you only talk to somebody and send them a text message saying, hey, what's up, once a month, you're not going to establish a really deep friendship. But if there's somebody that you jump on a call with 3 times a week for 6 months and you're like sharing really deep personal things, you're going to create a very strong bond with that person. I think that the exact same thing is how we create safety in our content with our audience. we have to be showing up enough so that we're top of mind and that we're giving an opportunity for a bond to be created. The platform is interchangeable. It could be email, it could be in-person events, it could be, your Instagram, it could be your newsletter, whatever it might be. And then I think this is where I think we're starting to see a shift with AI. What I'm really starting to lean into is it's really easy to create how-to content now. That stuff crushed, the ultimate guide to ranking #1 on Google, like all of those things were how we ranked with SEO. And then we were creating guides and lead magnets and courses and digital products around them. But now you can go into ChatGPT, ask that question, and get a 2,000 word article spat out. Now I really think people are starting to get very used to that stuff. They have taken the courses. Their bullshit detectors are a little bit higher than what they used to be 3, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I really think that we can create a lot of intimacy with our audience through the depth of sharing, which is sharing personal experiences and being very honest and vulnerable with what we're doing. So it's not just here's how to do this, because they can get that through ChatGPT. It's not necessarily selling them the how, it's selling ourselves as the person to deliver it to them, and also selling them like the idea of what we're trying to create and what we stand for. So I really think our mission, our values, and like the movement we stand behind is going to get much more important to really try and stand out, because I think personal branding is going to get a lot more difficult because it's easier to create content. So it's like, how can we start to continue to carve out a niche? It's going to be, in my opinion, these little things that go beyond what are super simple to do with these tools, which is like actually having a point of view. Yeah. And actually having experience doing stuff, because anybody can create a how-to article regardless of if they have experience. But do you have social proof to back it up? Do you have a story about how you went 6 figures in debt and came back out the other end by doing this? Those things I think are really going to be important. Or jumping on a podcast like this. I just posted an email about it. Like, when Kate asks me a question right here, I don't have a prompt engineer beside me giving me the response to it. I can't say like, what would Alex Hormozi do, and put this into my voice. And then I can do that on Instagram. I can do that on LinkedIn. But if I'm live or if I'm in person having coffee with somebody, I can't fake it. You either know your shit or you don't. So there's like little things that we can start to play with. But I think
it's like, it's just not about information anymore. I was saying literally on a call this morning to someone, I was like, if you don't have insights, that's what I think is the distinction, is like, it used to be just about information. Like, you can teach this, you literally know how to do this. But because AI knows how to do it, and because even for some people who don't know how to do it, they use AI to train their team how to do it. It's not really about the information per se, as I feel like people want the insight. To your point, they want the experience. They want to make sure that someone has lived and breathed this. Because the biggest concern that most of us have with AI, or that we should have, is what we're getting actually true? And what is in the search that we're getting and the response that we get back? Well, what does this look like for me? And like, what about this? And how does that look if this happens? And it's all these scenarios of lived experience of someone going through it.
It's going to be a really interesting shift over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, to see what really happens. I think we're going to see a lot of disruption. With COVID and the pandemic, we saw online coaching kind of blow up, and it was a lot more difficult because it devalued what a lot of people were doing because supply increased. And I think, it's going to be easier to put out content. So it's going to be harder to build a personal brand. So we're going to see it's more difficult to grow on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn. But as these things change, we just have to go back to the fundamental principles of, I don't think the base of everything has changed. I think the principles of building an effective business and marketing ourselves haven't changed. It's just that a lot of these things, like a headline, were enough back then. People didn't have to trust you because you were the only one that did it.
Yeah. My question, I guess, was like, with this process for you, because obviously I feel like a lot of people now know you as like a Substack guru. And I feel like, in my personal opinion, maybe it's just the side of the internet that I'm on, I feel like Substack, with this aspect of like trust building and marketing and brand is like the least talked about platform in context to all the mega ones that we see. And I'm curious, like, with this process, how you got to Substack. Because obviously, like you said, we have this aspect of conversion. We've got brand. We've got making sure that the marketing you're doing is actually something that fits for you. And obviously, you've done very well with Substack. And so I'm curious, what did, I guess, the journey to you ending up having Substack as a focus for you for your business? How did you get there? And what, I guess, like landed you to be like, okay, this feels like a good spot for me?
Yeah, it's not a pleasant journey. I think my journey was just
Well, as
being
you said,
terrible
success
at brand.
potentially requires struggle. So, there you go.
I've been in marketing for a very long time, but I've never been able to build a personal brand. I couldn't build a following on Twitter. I couldn't build a following on LinkedIn. I struggled to build a following on Instagram. I went through the whole, I was recording podcasts, posting these YouTube videos, putting out, 3 to 5 clips on every single platform, creating the thumbnails and the cover photos and the intros and the outros. And I was just so burnt out on content. I was like, I just wish that I could just write and the writing could do it for me. And that was effectively when I kind of found Substack, because you can't just write on Instagram. You have to either have an image, so you have to have a professional photo shoot, or you got to be on video. And if you got a video, then you have to figure out how to edit it. And, YouTube is like the heaviest lift of any platform in terms of all of the things it requires. At the time, LinkedIn, pretty much if you didn't have a photo, your post didn't go anywhere. So I just want to write. And that's when I came across Substack and was like, I'm just going to play with this platform. But most people don't know what it is, because it's still I believe around 1/30th the size of LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a third of the size of Facebook and Instagram. So it's a fairly new platform, even though it's been around for about 8 or 9 years, but that's 8 or 9 years compared to the 22 that LinkedIn's been around. So it's still emerging in internet world, but there's a lot of people coming over to the platform. We're seeing a lot of people that are tired of X and LinkedIn moving over to Substack. We're seeing a lot of people that can't grow on Instagram moving over to Substack. Gary Vaynerchuk, I believe within the last month or two, just launched his Substack. We're seeing very large celebrities like Pamela Anderson, and there's lots of journalists that have Substacks. And it's originated as a newsletter platform, but it's kind of this interesting ecosystem, because it's kind of like your blog, your email, your social media, and your Facebook group in kind of one platform. So your posts land in people's inboxes. You can chat with your subscribers on the platform. You can also post videos and go live, and you can sync it to your YouTube channel, and you can actually host your podcast there now as a podcast host. So they're really trying to evolve from writing into a creator ecosystem, which I'm all for, because I think it can give us a lot of leverage in terms of you can record a podcast and record it, and it goes to YouTube, it goes to LinkedIn, it's a post and a podcast on Spotify. I think there's some cool opportunities there, but it just allowed me to write. And I really fell in love with writing. I've written and dabbled in the past, but I enjoyed writing, and I could just sink into things, and I could share my story. And anybody that's listening can probably tell I am long-winded. It's my wiring. People like me, ADHD, etc., we are context-heavy communicators. I need to make sure you've got all the context if I'm going to deliver things. And it allowed me to really sink into that. I'm not able to write 120 or 140 character tweet.
I was you must hate an Instagram caption.
Yeah,
Instagram captions are not mine.
Yeah, character limits are just not my friend. But it allowed me to sink into that. And I didn't see fast growth. It took me a while, but I started to figure it out. I now, moving forward, I've been on the platform for a little over 2 years, but that platform alone, I've had a single post generate over 600 email subscribers. I've had a single post that I've tracked back about $125,000 in revenue from, and that post got no likes. I have been asked to speak 20 times last year from Substack alone. I was asked to present to masterminds. I was asked to speak on stage. I've written 3 books because like my posts started to turn into books. I've had people sponsor my newsletter, built 9 revenue streams, all stemming from this platform. But it really started with just me falling in love with writing, and that facilitated building a personal brand because I knew from my experience to do what I wanted to do, I knew that I needed to have a personal brand. Going through clinical burnout, working with a therapist that was like, you're working too much, and starting to compare me to some of their patients that were on like 6 to 12 month sabbaticals from work. And I'm like, well, shit, like I can't do that. I'm the sole income earner in my house. My wife's going to school, and I can't take a day off work, let alone a month or 6 months to like recover from burnout. So I knew the business I had to create needed to fundamentally change. So I knew I needed to have an email list, and I needed to have some leveraged products. So I wasn't always have to be on. So I knew I needed a brand, and I knew that it was going to take me time. So I was going to invest in building this for a while, and writing just was like the fit for me. I prefer to communicate with words. I love speaking, but it's easy to just kind of sit down and write. I can do that from a coffee shop, from a beach. Like this requires a home studio in order to do a podcast or to be on YouTube. And it just really kind of transpired from there. And there's just so many serendipitous things that come from building a personal brand, not just with writing, but there's so many things we can't quantify, track, and accredit to just being present for a very long period of time. Mr. Beast is a good example. He has the 2nd season of Beast Games on Netflix. He's got chocolate bars. It's an extreme example, but it came off the back of just somebody that built a brand, and they just open up opportunities. And it's not just for creators. When I talk to people running paid advertising, like brand increases your conversion rate. Brand gives you more price flexibility compared to your competitors because you have more of a trustworthy brand. They will pay more for you. They will be less likely to leave you. Your retention's going to be higher. It gives you opportunities. Somebody like The Rock to go, I'm going to create a tequila. Now I'm going to buy the XFL. Now I'm going to create an energy drink. Because you have a brand, there's opportunities and doors that open. And it's going to take so much longer than we realize it's going to take. But until we start and find something that we enjoy doing, it's just never going to happen. So I think it's so important to kind of have at like the backbone of what we're doing, because the age that we live in, it's going to get very difficult to just start running ads with no experience and no social media and build a 6 and 7 figure business unless you got a lot of capital to throw at it. Like we need to start putting these other pieces of the puzzle in place, and like brand is one of those cornerstone ones.
Well, one of the things that's coming out is like AI creators, which are, you and I doing this podcast, and we're not real and we're AI bots instead, right? And so I think while obviously technology is great, but technology also exposes these other parts from a human lens of what we desire, which is the fact that many of us want efficiency and we want information and we want speed. But then simultaneously, as technology is increasing, the other side of, as to your point, like connection and having a bond and depth and vulnerability, as AI speeds up, that's speeding up. And so I think what I take from the Substack piece as well is that you're really able to be thorough, and you're able to have these like longer, more intentional pieces, which is kind of similar even for me with this podcast. People are like, why do you do it? Because this is not necessarily one of those conversion tools. It's a brand tool. And so people are like, I don't understand why you would spend so much time to prep, record, edit, publish all this stuff when it's not going to make you a sale per episode. But the thing that I tell people is like, think about, even for your Substack, how many people spend length of time with you versus like amount of little appetizers basically of time with you. And so if I think about spending an hour with somebody every single week, that is like 4, 5, 10x compared to what someone's getting from me on social media through a quick story of 30 seconds, a reel of 17 seconds. Like the amount of time or the amount of pieces I would have to produce in order to have, to your point earlier with the text message analogy, like those connection points. Like the amount of time that I'm spending, I'm having a FaceTime with someone for an hour every single week as a result of having the podcast. So like, I think for you, to the point of depth, there's also that piece, which I think, whether for someone it's Substack or a newsletter or whatever it might be, I think you need that time with your people, because I think as things progress with AI and technology, it's going to become more and more valuable. And so I don't think there's going to be an opportunity to avoid it. But I know going into today, like everyone was like, I have 52 questions for him about Substack. So if it works for you, I'm going to rapid fire
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's do it.
some Substack questions, because I think that everyone hears about social media all the time. But when you said it's a newer platform, one of the things that instantly came to mind for me was the TikTok era, when everyone's like, TikTok is at its prime reach. You can get in front of 3 million people overnight. And then obviously as the user base increased, that decreased in the sense of the ease of getting in front of people. Would you say that that's pretty similar with Substack right now, in the sense of, do you think being first to the platform or being early to the platform has leverage for people if they were to get started with it?
Oh, 100%. I talk all the time. I'm not a self-proclaimed Substack guru. I try and like not reference myself as that. I'm like,
Other
I'm an
people
author.
definitely reference you as that. So
And I'm like,
as a
and that's
heads up.
okay. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But 100%, it's everybody tries to be like, oh, the algorithm's different and the vibe's different. And I'm like, yes, it is. But we can't get romantic about the platform. It's still a platform run by a business. It's still an algorithm. To me, I view Substack as a traffic source. In 2 years from now, it might not be there. That's a risk that I have to take. But when I see people growing and it's a place I enjoy being, and I see people like Gary Vaynerchuk moving there, I'm like, these people don't make dumb decisions. They're very intelligent with, the moves that they make in the market. You start to just have to make a bet. So, the interesting part is that I'm going to be expanding out to other platforms now, because I can't share Substack with people that are already on Substack. Like if I want to get people onto Substack and help them grow,
True.
I need to be on LinkedIn
True.
and I need to be on Instagram
Yeah.
and podcasts. So my marketing strategy, I didn't grow till I doubled down on Substack, but now I've always had the goal of expanding beyond. So now I'm going to be expanding beyond, but 100%, it's as the platform grows, like everything else. And there's so many gurus on Substack that just glorify it. I'm like, okay, it's business. Every platform has shown us in the past that it follows this thing where it goes,
Same cycle.
It's great growth, and then the growth slowly starts to decay and it gets harder and harder and harder to grow. And like Substack is probably not going to be any different unless they find some magical way. Because I'm like, where do you think the new users are going to come from? They're going to come from X, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Like, come on, people, like let's think about this. So 100%, I think it's going to, like, the best time is going to be yesterday. And like the next best time is right now. I think the longer people wait, it's going to only get more difficult, but there's a lot of people building very successful businesses on that platform.
Well, I think everybody looked at TikTok and they're like, man, I really wish I would have done it earlier. Or, man, I wish I was like first to market with the organic reach that it used to provide. And now it's like, if you start a new account, you get like 200 views for the next like year and a half. And to your point, you got to wait out the brand build, where there is this, initial round when it's kind of its initial stage of being a smaller platform, that if you do get on it early, you can kind of leverage that opportunity. The question I would have with Substack compared to like socials, I would hazard to guess you can't just take your social platform and assume that your writing style of Instagram is going to just duplicate itself and perform well on Substack. Because I know even going into today, people are like, well, isn't this just a glorified newsletter? Like, what's the difference? Why do I need it? And so I'm curious, when you see, we've got social strategy of, copy, for example, on blogs, we've got newsletters, we've got, writing, for example, on a shorter form of like an Instagram side. Maybe how, for the person who's seeing all that information, how you would, I guess, frame or kind of give context to where Substack fits within an ecosystem like that.
Yeah, they have a combination of short and long form content. So they have what's called the notes feed, which is effectively like X on Substack. and that gets shown to people that are following you. That's what drives the algorithm for discoverability. And then people subscribe, and then they get effectively what they would call a post, which is the worst vernacular they could possibly choose. And so it's like, is it a newsletter? Is it an article? Is it a post? So they call it posts. It's effectively would call it a newsletter, but we have a conception of what a newsletter is in terms of like old email marketing days of like, there's a banner at the top and it's like super markety, and it would be more like a blog post, so to speak, but think of it like a written YouTube video or a written podcast. I think would be like the simplest way to do it. Your podcast and YouTube videos typically start from scripts. Your Substack could be that script. So think like you're telling a story, you're taking through what people talking about what people are experiencing and seeing, and then you're delivering the how to move through this and the takeaways and the insights. Like that's how I approach it. I approach it more like a more in-depth email is kind of how I personally approach Substack. And I'm wanting to deliver value. I'm wanting to establish myself in the eyes of people. And one of the things I talk about is if somebody were to not see your name on it, would they know that you wrote it? And I've had people recognize stuff I've written that they didn't know was written by me. And they're like, oh, that sounds like Landon, because I stand for something in what I do. But there's so many things of people that are authors to people that are journalists to people talking about fitness to people talking about horses to faith to business, everything on there. And there's such a variety of the way people are delivering that content. I think the best thing that you can do is just like honor what's most authentic to you and just infuse that into the platform, because if you veer too far from that, you're just not going to enjoy what you're doing, and people can pick up on that.
And I guess with that, like to the point of like, there's, Substacks for horses. I feel like there's platforms for everything. There's podcasts for dogs. There's everything. But with that, is it interest based then? Meaning like a lot of the time, like we often are, I feel like we're in this era with most platforms where we're kind of pulling away from followers and we're leaning more toward just interest consumption. So like even the amount of people who might consume your Instagram who don't follow you, but they constantly see your reels, or people who see your TikToks, but they've never followed you and they've been consuming you for 2 years. Would you say Substack is kind of similar in the sense of the way that it feeds your marketing to people? Is it interest based typically, or is it leverageable per se to have a larger following?
I think Substack is still trying to figure its shit out. If I'm being
Okay.
they technically have followers and subscribers. When I view my chart, the followers are the ones that see the least amount of my content. It's like your subscribers and then like unconnected people and then my followers. So like I have 20,000 followers on the platform. I don't really understand what the metric is because it doesn't really seem like it shows anything to your followers. I think it's very early in them playing with their algorithm, but that's just for the notes feed. So like short form content. The content for subscribers, they have an inbox and they get emailed out to people. So the long form content is going to land in someone's inbox. It's also going to rank on search engines. I get a few % of my traffic from Claude, ChatGPT, and Perplexity because my stuff is showing up in AI search platforms. So there's the ability for us to get indexed. There's the ability for us to just imagine if every one of your podcasts, without you doing anything, automatically showed up in everyone's inbox. That's just something we don't have with normal social media. Most of us are trying to use these tools to deplatform somebody to our email list, and Substack effectively just kind of does that all without anybody having to leave the platform.
And so for you, would you say that most people are using Substack alongside an additional email list?
Only if they're a savvy marketer.
Okay.
Most people, I would say no. The people that are in kind of the marketer course creator type stuff are, because we understand that we need to be showing up more for people emails in order to be able to sell them.
Okay. And obviously to your point of short dopamine hit, long-term play brand, if someone's thinking about leaning into Substack, I was like, okay, like I really missed the boat with TikTok. I am somebody who loves to write. I could see this being something that I enjoy. what is, if you were going to, guide them as a mentor going into this, what is the expectation that they should have as to maybe the possibility of what it could do for their business short term, but the true leverage of what this basically would look like in their marketing ecosystem if they were to, like you did, like stick it out for, say a year and a half, 2 years, as to what it could develop?
It really depends. So there's certain niches that people that I work with, like they come to me. I have one lady, she does marketing for hotels and Airbnb owners. And I'm like, well, I don't think that there's a massive amount of people on Substack for that right now. But I'm like,
Yeah.
in 5 years, there very well could be. If there's a billion users on there, then they will be on the platform. So it's kind of like it might be something that you're investing and you're taking a bet on the platform. Like the thing I look at is like Gary Vaynerchuk wouldn't have created a Substack and put out a job posting for a Substack manager if he didn't think it was going to be something. I applied for it. I didn't get hired though. But I think there's massive amount of potential. I know people on the platform in the business space, which can be a little skewed, that are running 50K months from their Substack.
Wow.
And it's usually multiple revenue streams. So it might be like a paid subscription plus cohorts plus courses. Usually it's not just one singular thing. There are some people in kind of like the writing AI space that they have a few paid publications, just the paid content on Substack, that they're making multiple six figures a year. I do around $1,000 to $3,000 a month in sales just off courses off the back of my Substack. That's not including any one-to-one, any coaching or like done for you services that I'm working with people that have read my content. So I think that there's a lot of leeway in what can potentially happen. So for somebody, it might be their sole focus. For another person, it just might be like brand extension of you're already have a podcast, you're on YouTube and you're on Instagram. Okay, well, maybe we're going to now take the transcript. Like if you're already creating content, it's a very easy transition to add that platform because the simplest thing to do is to just start with what you're already creating. And then you can kind of figure out the nuts and bolts of what's going to need to adjust to grow on that platform as you grow. But it's going to depend on if you're, a solo creator and you're doing this in your 1 hour in the evening versus if you're a CEO and you have a content team. The context of that conversation will be quite nuanced. So it can either be like an extension to grow your brand because there's people here, they consume information differently. I just finished a 5,000 word article, which I didn't intend it to be that because, like I said, I'm not concise.
He's like, guys, I'm thorough. Okay.
And it's like a 30-minute read. So like that might not go viral, but the people that read that are just very they are very bought into my kind of view of the world and the movement that I'm trying to create. I've had articles where I've had 1,600 people click on a link to a product because there was a link in that article and that article went viral. So there's a lot of opportunity to create cash flow. I'm just not going to say it's going to happen overnight. We still need to approach it with like a 6 to 12 month kind of like minimum. Let's figure this stuff out. But the thing that really kind of gets me is the conversation on, okay, well, like so many more brands, there's going to be AI creators, AI podcast hosts. Like, so if it's going to get harder, does that mean we should just like not do it?
Right.
Like what's the alternative? Is go hide under a rock. Like, okay, maybe you don't go on Instagram, maybe you go in person, but like people need to know who you are. We got to find the platform for us.
Well, and I think it's also really exciting to finally have a platform for the people who hate video or who hate audio, to be honest. Like, I think there's a lot of creators that, you can be obviously strategic with things like Instagram and carousels and stuff like that. And people have definitely won in some markets with that approach. But I think that if you're somebody who doesn't love video or love audio, like I feel like everyone I talk to now is like, I just wish I could get off social media. Like I wish I could just not have to make content anymore in order for my business to survive. And to your point, for you to be able to write that from a coffee shop, or I'm thinking about like the busy mom who wants to write it at night in bed after having like a heck of a day and she's still got like spit up on her shirt from putting the kids down, right? Like that's just a reality that there are a lot of entrepreneurs who have that. And yet we're like, hey, like go make 3 TikToks a day so that you can grow, or go put up a story every single day so you can grow on Instagram. Like, this is to me really exciting for the person who feels like, to your point of tying in the vision to the business, maybe the long-term play is that you don't want to live on social media. And this, and planting these seeds now could be, to your point, fast forward 2 years, 3 years, and even your earlier point of like, how much money do you need from the business? What if doing this and starting this now was the thing that planted the seed so that you're actually not on social media 3 years from now in order to run your business, and you're writing at a time or a place where it works for you?
100%. I think it's when we really start to change the conversation of what we're actually trying to achieve. Like, I'm not thinking about retiring. Sitting and doing nothing sounds awful. We're probably like
Yeah.
you and I, we're probably still going to engage in something.
Yeah.
And like, I can still share my wisdom and write. That seems pretty low effort, but still keeps you engaged in doing something. And it can still be a revenue stream, even in like the simplest form.
Right.
So
Right.
I just love it from an opportunity standpoint and also an accessibility standpoint. Like you said, not everybody wants to talk. Not everybody wants to be on video. Not everybody wants to get photo shoots done in order to have Instagram photos, because that was me. I hated all of that. And I tried so hard. I've spent so much money on photo shoots and like just never got any growth.
It's painful to think about, actually.
Right. And
it is.
And then you're like, oh, but I can just write. But there's also people that hate writing. So it's totally fair. But now on Substack, there's going to be accounts that are just going to be going live and growing. So now they're starting to open up these doors for other creators that want to create in whatever feels best for them. So I think it's going to be an interesting time, but I like writing. So, my book came from just starting to write on Substack. And I was like, these posts became the foundation of a book that I published. And now I'm an author. I'm like, that's crazy. And now I'm speaking on stages and I'm like, that's terrifying. And it all started from just kind of starting to really lean into creating a personal brand, but in a way that felt good to me, which was so different than what I had spent 15 to 18 years trying to do.
Well, I think it goes back to your original point, which is that it all works. Like, we've seen people who have built the entire business on a podcast. We've seen people build it through YouTube, people who built it through, 5 TikToks a day for the last 3-4 years. Like, every single platform, if you wanted to find a case study of someone who's leveraged it to be able to scale the business, you will find it. And I think, to what you've done even in the last 2 years, to your point of like, okay, it's driving traffic to offers, low ticket or high ticket. It's building you personal brand. It's getting you speaking opportunities. Like, you're now an author. Like, that's a lot to happen when you really put that in context for 2 years. Because if there's somebody else who's maybe like an embryo in business and they're like just getting started, to think about all that could transpire for you in 2 years is incredible. Or even if you're a scaling entrepreneur who's like, hey, I feel like the current ecosystem that I have is not working. And I kind of, while yes, we're scaling and we're making money, I talk to a lot of scaling entrepreneurs, as I'm sure you do, who have like built their own prison. They're in this place where they're like, I built it on TikTok of 3 to 5 a day. I built it on YouTube. And now if I stop, my whole business crumbles. So like, I think whether you're that beginner or you're scaling, it can be exciting to think about this other opportunity of saying, okay, could I be first to the platform? Like you said, maybe it's not your dominant right now, but it could become your dominant in the next 2 years if you put intention into it. And to think about, maybe that actually is a better fit for your lifestyle than some of the stuff that like another guru has told you like is the quote unquote way. And I think it literally goes back to the center point you started with, which is like, yes, we care about conversions. Yes, we care about brand. But the most important thing that makes the whole ecosystem successful is the person who's doing it, which is like, do you have the capacity for this? Do you have the desire for this? Do you have the schedule for this? Do you have the personality for this? And asking those questions. And I think for some people listening to you with Substack, they're going to be like, okay, like this feels like my place. No video, no photo shoots. Like, this sounds like my place to be. So I guess I would love to put a bow on like all of the marketing incredible genius today. For the person listening who feels like they're kind of drowning in the marketing advice, you've got like Guru A, who's like, ads are the way to go. And then Guru B, who's saying, TikTok, Instagram, or TikTok's dead, Instagram's dead. Like, all of this noise. And obviously you work with a lot of different sizes of business. Any advice for the person who's kind of, I guess, trying to find their footing or still feels like maybe there is this like friction or resistance when it comes to marketing for their business, whether or not it has, generated some outcomes or not?
Yeah. So when I'm thinking about the person who's, they've invested in the programs, the courses, nothing's working. Their inner critic is loud, being like, what am I doing wrong? How come everybody else has got it figured out? First off, none of us have it figured out. Most of us are just like trying to tread and stay above water. Secondly, most of the people you think have it figured out are completely drowning behind the scenes, like very real. Like they're crying when they're not on live on Instagram kind of thing. But I think we need to take a step back and ask ourselves some very difficult questions, because we get so caught up in the marketing persuasion and the gaslighting and like the shame that's used to sell us stuff. If we start to center ourselves back in our business, everything out there, for the most part, completely is focused on like, here's my blueprint. But we need to bring us back into our business. That's the root of success. What we want, what we value. And if we can view things through that lens and go like, what if this felt good? What would this look like? Like, what if this were easy? Like, I remember asking one of my business partners, I'm like, what would this business look like if it was just easy? It's like, well, I love writing emails. Like I'd wake up, I would write an email for the day. I would, do a couple coaching calls. And I'm like, okay, if we know that, then we start to understand what our non-negotiables are. You don't want to be creating content every single day. Okay, then we take that off the list and we have 2 other opportunities to build your audience, because we got to build the email list, but we can do that with paid ads. We can do that with joint ventures. We can sponsor people's newsletters or podcasts. So if we can understand what we want to be doing, what would feel good, then we can start to use those as kind of like bumper lanes to give us some guidance on the business model that's going to just feel better. Because the biggest thing, like you said, we end up one day realizing we hate what we created. And that's such a terrible place to be in. I've been there. Burned,
especially if it's made you like 7 or multiple 7 figures, then you're really in this.
It's so scary to change.
Yeah.
We just get caught being like, I just have to do more. I need to hire more people. I need to get into this new mastermind and create this new VSL. We're just stumbling. And I was listening to one of your Instagram stories you posted today, and it was talking about we get caught trying to solve the symptom, not the root cause problem. And it's the same thing. We get caught jumping after new tactics when we realize we just built a business that we don't actually want to be running. Or we're just in a different phase, and now we just need to simply evolve what we're doing and understand that there's going to be some difficult changes that have to be made. So I think we got to get really intimate with what would actually feel good, really difficult conversations with ourselves, and then just slowly starting to be like, okay, well, I don't want to do these things. I would like to do these things. Sometimes it's much easier to be like, I don't want to send DMs. I don't want to do this. And very often with business, if we know what we don't want to do, we're left with a menu of things that we can choose from. And it might take trying a few things, but it can be scary to launch a new offer, to create a new product, to try something new. But usually a lot of that fear is just we're being called into something that's more aligned for us. And we have to be able to move through that and accept that in order to get the business that we actually want.
And I think it goes to your earlier piece, which is that I guess the fear piece to keep in mind or to center a ground in is that it all works anyways. Like even to, I guess, put a bow on, even for me, I did the whole TikTok thing. Like I really leaned into it for like probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I did the 3 videos a day, every single weekend, every Saturday, filming like 35 individual videos. And I was like, okay, like if this is what it takes, like I'm willing to try anything. And I've talked a lot about it on the podcast, which is like, that's the reason I created the podcast. Like to exactly what you just said, I was like, okay, like I don't want to do this. Like I have zero, if this is what it means to scale, I'd actually rather go back to having a small business, or if it ended up at that place, back to a 9-to-5. If I'm not a TikTok guru and that's going to, derail the business, I think I actually would have to accept that, because this filming every Saturday is not the life that I want, or like waking up before work and calls every day to film 3 videos didn't work. But then that's what helped me to realize, okay, if it is about volume, then I'll do a podcast and I'll chop it into clips and then take those clips and put it on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and whatever. And so, yes, it's a different formula, but to your point, the elimination of I'm not going to do X is actually what presented what I really wanted, which is I wanted volume without the pressure. And so I was like, okay, well, if that's what I want, how do I do that? And then that was like, poof, here's your podcast. So I so agree with the elimination process, because I think many of us are like, okay, like, what do I want? And it's like nothing comes to us. And to your
But
point,
also sometimes it's just presenting the next thing, and that next thing might not be the thing. And that is hard because we want certainty. We want the blueprint to get X amount of clients in X amount of time, guaranteed, but it doesn't exist. So sometimes we need to, like, maybe you needed to do the TikTok thing to get to the podcast thing. And that was your journey. So I think if we can start to either tap into whatever we believe in or existentialism and understand that everything happens for a reason, we can derive the meaning from our journey. My journey hasn't been great. I wrote a post, it went viral, which was odd, about paying off $100,000 worth of debt that my wife and I took on to close a business in 2018. We just paid it off. I was like, almost 3,000 days, all these payments. We lost our gym, we lost our house to pay off a portion of it, we lost our identity, we lost an entire group of friends, and we just paid this off. Like, there's a journey that we have to go on, and now I can speak into this and I can create hope for people that are in debt or going to school and have closed and failed businesses. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't go through that experience. So I'm able to share so much because of what I went through. But just because we do something, it doesn't mean we're going to guarantee success. It might be the thing that gets us to the next thing, but that's not bad. Like, that can be such a beautiful thing when we realize, why are we doing all of this? It's not to make money. I made a note. I had this revelation and I wrote it down, and I was like, I enjoy building. I can get so caught up in like, this launch didn't go the way I wanted to. I wish I was further ahead. It's like, I just love creating things. I love helping people. I love coaching people. I love just talking and brainstorming. And just that realization of like, the part that I'm always thinking is the bad is actually the entire point of what I'm doing. And if somebody realizes maybe entrepreneurship isn't for them, like, there's no shame in that. It's not for everyone. Just because we saw somebody post next to a Lamborghini or in Bali typing on their keyboard, like, maybe you are happier and more content with your life doing whatever, a 9 to 5, because of the security it provides for you and your family. Like, that's awesome. I wish, like, I'm striving for being content, not to hit X financial goal. And it took a lot of time and self-work and study to get to a place where that realization is just like grounding. And it's, I think, truthfully, like, one of the biggest shifts that we have to create in like this narrative of like online success.
Well, and I think even as a through line for today, one of the things that I take from it is really that, like, marketing, it was just like a light bulb as we were talking, is like really truthfully just as much mindset as it is strategy. Because I think a lot of us are, okay, we have mindset, we've got marketing, we've got sales, we've got offers, we've got brand. Like, we think about them almost like in these perfect little organized buckets. But like, who you are as a brand and how you show up is directly correlated to like who you perceive that you are, or who you believe that you are, the masks of who you pretend to be. Like, there's so much of the mindset element to it. To the business strategy side, the business you're building, is the business you're building because you actually want that business? Is it because someone has told you that's the business? Do you do it out of guilt because this is what you're supposed to do, or it built success, so I have to stick with it, and that kind of, sunk cost aspect to it? And I think as you were talking today, obviously people see Landon Substack and like, yes, scale with Substack. But it's like, I think as what happens in most of entrepreneurship, when you dive into the strategy, to your point of like, well, what kind of business do you want? And what kind of results are you expecting? And are you willing to put in the work and the consistency if there was no dopamine hit for 2 years? all of the underbelly of a lot of what you've said has been kind of the through line of your success, or the stepping stones that created it, came from a lot of clarity, inner work, like your mindset about yourself, about the business, about strategy, about success. Like there's so many layers that you had to get clarity on and you had to challenge yourself on in order to allow these pieces to come into play. And so I think listening today, it can be really exciting to say, okay, well, Landon says Substack's the way to go. Substack's where we're going. Or like, Kate says, podcasts are great. I'm going to start a podcast. But I think the extra piece that I would add to what you said, and I agree with all of it, is this extra filter of like what you said, sitting with yourself. Because I think that all the marketing works, but there's a possibility that the reason it's not working is actually tied back to you, not to the platform. And so I think when we start to look at it with that mirror, that's really where the work comes in. Obviously, yes, there's tactics and strategies. And I know you have like offers and support and freebies and all of that stuff to support people with that, which they absolutely should go check out if you're thinking about going onto Substack. But I think it starts with knowing why you're going into it. And, even challenging listening today, is hearing Landon talk about Substack the real reason you're going to Substack? Or is it because Substack is actually something that listening to you has, helped them to go, okay, yeah, this is actually really the kind of life that I want. So I think it's like the discernment, it's so small. It's these tiny little decisions. But I think if you have that discernment, that's really the thing that, from what I'm hearing from your entire journey, is actually what created like the peace, but also the success that you have now.
Totally. And like you said, like the mindset component, we see it in the programs. Every coaching program now has a mindset coach. Why is that? I wonder. It's maybe not just the strategy that they're giving everybody to make it work, but the key for me, and I wrote about this in like a big rant, is when we struggle to follow the plan, a lot of mainstream coaches were told to do more, do better, or, get out of the program. Like,
Mhm.
but so
You're not coachable is what you usually
we're
hear.
made like they're weaponizing shame in their marketing and in how they coach, and it's not us. It's that plan isn't the plan that was going to work for us, because maybe you don't want to work 7 days a week, maybe you don't want to charge $10,000 or do all of these things or run ads, and that's okay. It's just finding what's going to work. And like you said, these small differences of, this is something I feel would be good versus this is the next shiny object that I'm going to do because this person said it's something that can work. It's like, that's everything.
Well, today was basically a masterclass in all things Landon's brain, which, as you guys can tell, is incredible. So if somebody wants to learn more from you, maybe it's about Substack, maybe it's just honestly a continuation of some of the things you shared today, what is the best place for somebody to reach out to you to kind of connect? Obviously Substack, side note, you guys should go there. But other than Substack, what would be the, other places that you'd want people to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Substack. Everything is linked up from my website at landonp.com. I am on most platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm pretty much everywhere, and I usually check most things. I'm fairly easy to get in touch with. I might take a day or two to reply because messages are not my forte, but Substack is where it's kind of like my home online, and everything kind of derives from there. So my DMs on Substack are always open. There's a form to reach out to me on my website as well. So I'm happy to chat and deepen this conversation with anybody. It's just, that's kind of like my mission of what I'm really trying to do, is just change a lot of the narrative of what we've seen for so many years, because I think it's really done a disservice to so many people.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much, Landon, for today. This was great.
Thank you so much for having me
It
on.
was so good. Yeah, of course. Well, that was basically like mindset, marketing, all things Landon, scaling, everything masterclass for you. If you guys have any questions, or maybe, to be honest, even just a download, like we always talk about being witnessed in aha moments and witnessed in transformation. And so if you are someone who maybe you heard something that had nothing to do with strategy today and you're like, that really landed for me. I know for me, when I'm on other people's podcasts, or even with this podcast, when people reach out, it really just fills my bucket in a way I really can't describe. And I think it's incredible to see as well what Landon shares, so that he gets the feedback of what lands for people and what was an aha moment and wording about things, or, a spark that happened as a result of something he shares. So with that being said, I also want to invite you to reach out to him, whether it is through website, Instagram, Substack, just to kind of share something that was a light bulb for you and something that downloaded today. So with that being said, we will see you on next week's episode. And as always, stay ambitious.